The silence of the communication room was broken by a sudden burst of static. Seok Jin leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the flickering screens that lined the walls of the United Earth Interstellar Negotiations Bureau. It was just another typical night shift, or so he thought. The young communications analyst had seen countless hours of empty space chatter, but something about this transmission felt different. His fingers danced across the holographic keyboard, filtering and analyzing the incoming signal. Most would have dismissed it as random noise, but Seok Jin had a knack for finding patterns where others saw only chaos. At the far end of the room, senior analysts chatted quietly, sipping their late-night coffee. They paid little attention to the junior officer working the night shift. Seok Jin didn't mind. He preferred the quiet, the opportunity to explore without constant supervision. The signal grew stronger. It wasn't from any human source. That much was clear. The frequency, the modulation, the very rhythm of the transmission spoke of something entirely alien. His heart began to race. First contact wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not on a quiet Tuesday night in a half-empty communication center. Thousands of light-years away, aboard the Kraltheri Galactic Confederation's primary communication vessel, panic was brewing. Junior Communications Officer Hannah Park stared at her screens in disbelief. The human signal had come out of nowhere, breaking through their most advanced communication filters. "It's impossible," she muttered, adjusting her translation algorithms. Most of her colleagues would have immediately classified the transmission as a potential threat. The Kraltheri were a species built on caution, on fear of the unknown. But Hannah was different. Her hand hovered over the emergency alert button. Protocol demanded she report any unknown signal immediately, but something held her back. The signal wasn't aggressive. It wasn't a weapon. It was communication. Back on Earth, Seok Jin isolated the signal. It was a complex web of data, news broadcasts, entertainment channels, scientific discussions, an entire slice of human civilization, accidentally broadcast into the depths of space. He realized with a mix of excitement and terror that this might be the moment humanity would make its first true alien contact. The Kraltheri communication ship buzzed with tension. Senior officers demanded immediate action. "We cannot risk an unknown threat," the lead commander barked. "Prepare defensive protocols." Hannah listened silently, her fingers working faster than anyone could see. She was translating, analyzing, understanding. The human signal was beautiful in its complexity, a chaotic mix of languages, emotions, scientific discovery. It spoke of a species that was messy, unpredictable, alive. "Wait," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the rising panic. "These aren't signals of aggression. These are signals of life." Her statement stopped the room cold. On Earth, Seok Jin made a similar discovery. The alien signal that had triggered their systems was nothing more than a routine communication suite. Two civilizations, separated by unimaginable distances, had accidentally touched for the first time. Neither knew it yet, but this moment would change everything. Humanity was about to be introduced to a galaxy it had no idea what was coming. And the first contact would not be through carefully planned diplomatic channels, but through a random burst of cosmic static. The universe held its breath. 2 months after the accidental signal, Seok Jin found himself standing in the massive conference hall of Space Station Epsilon 9. The station hung in neutral space, a delicate bubble of metal and light surrounded by the infinite darkness. Around him, representatives from dozens of alien species moved like strange shadows, their conversations a low hum of worry and fear. The Vorta Imperium was on the move again. Each species had its own story of loss. The Kraltheri had lost 3 colony worlds. The Zinteri Confederation had seen entire research stations wiped from existence. But nobody seemed willing to stand up and fight back. Everyone was too scared. Seok Jin watched carefully. As a junior diplomatic strategist, he wasn't supposed to be here, but the human delegation had sent their youngest and brightest, hoping to understand the complex web of galactic politics. At the far end of the conference hall, Hannah Park stood near the Kraltheri delegation. She looked different now, wearing the official communication uniform, her posture more rigid. But her eyes still held that spark of curiosity that had saved humanity from an initial misunderstanding. The main screen flickered to life. Star maps appeared, showing the rapid expansion of the Vorta Imperium. Red zones spread like a growing infection, consuming star systems one by one. Each red zone represented worlds destroyed, civilizations crushed, entire populations removed. "We cannot fight," mumbled a delegate from the Trelax system. His tentacles moved nervously. "The Vorta are too strong." Silk Jin caught Hannah's eye across the room. She gave a slight nod. Something was brewing, and they both knew it. The current strategy was simple: run and hide. Each species would sacrifice some worlds to save others. It was a game of survival, not victory. The Vorta knew this. They counted on this fear. A new representative stepped forward. An old Kraltheri diplomat with silver markings that showed years of service. His voice was low but carried across the hall. "We need a solution," he said. "Not just survival. Something different." Whispers filled the room. Different was dangerous. Different meant risk. And in this galaxy, risk meant death. Silk Jin leaned forward. His data pad showed something interesting. Hidden in the complex battle reports, there was a pattern. The Vorta had a weakness. Not a military weakness, something deeper. They attacked worlds that showed no resistance. They crushed civilizations that seemed afraid. But what would happen if someone fought back in a way they didn't expect? Hannah was watching him now. She could see the thoughts forming in his eyes. The human was thinking something nobody else would dare to think. The Vorta Imperium believed in predictable enemies. Enemies who would run. Enemies who would negotiate. Enemies who would surrender. Humanity was none of those things. As the conference continued, with species trading desperate plans and fearful negotiations, Silk Jin made a decision. Humanity would not be just another victim. They would be something else entirely. Outside the conference hall, the stars continued their silent dance. Millions of light years away, the Vorta Imperium continued its march of destruction. They had no idea what was coming. No idea at all. Dr. Yoon Jae stood in front of a massive holographic display, his fingers moving quickly across floating screens. Around him, the United Earth Strategic Research Center hummed with energy. This was no ordinary research facility. This was where humans were trying to understand something bigger than themselves. The alien reports about the Vorta Imperium covered every surface. Star maps, battle records, communication logs, all painted a picture of a ruthless enemy that crushed everything in its path. But Dr. J saw something different. Where others saw destruction, he saw patterns. Where others saw hopelessness, he saw opportunity. "Look at this," he muttered to his assistant, a young woman named Kim Eun. Her eyes followed his rapid movements across the holographic displays. Humans were different. Every alien species had told stories about humanity. Stories of unpredictability, of creativity, of a strange ability to turn problems into solutions. The Kraltheri whispered about human adaptability. The Zinteri spoke of human imagination, but nobody truly understood what that meant. Dr. Ja pulled up a series of battle simulations. Traditional alien warfare was about strength, about overwhelming force. The Vorta Imperium crushed worlds with massive warships and endless armies. They expected enemies to follow rules, to be predictable. Humans didn't play by those rules. He showed Kim a simulation where a small human team defeated a much larger force, not through superior weapons, not through better technology, but through something else entirely. Creativity, Dr. J explained. Emotional intelligence. The ability to understand and predict an enemy's thinking, not just their military strategy. In the simulation, the human team used unconventional methods. They didn't fight the enemy's strength. They worked around it. They used the environment. They used psychology. They turned the enemy's expectations against them. Across the galaxy, Alien species were preparing for traditional warfare. They were gathering ships, building massive weapons, creating huge armies. They thought war was about who had the most power. Humans knew better. War was about breaking patterns, about thinking differently, about seeing solutions where others saw only problems. Dr. G's research showed something remarkable. Humans had a unique combination of traits that made them unlike any other species. They could be incredibly kind and incredibly dangerous. They could show mercy and show incredible determination. They could collaborate and they could fight alone. This flexibility was their greatest weapon. The Vorta Imperium would expect resistance to look a certain way. They would expect defenders to be afraid, to follow traditional military thinking, to protect what they had. Humans would do something else entirely. "We're not going to fight their war," Dr. J told Kim. "We're going to change how war is fought." Outside the research center, the first human ships were being prepared. They looked different from alien warships, smaller, more adaptable, designed not just to fight, but to think. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. Humanity was not just another species to be conquered. They were something entirely new. The Interstellar Council chamber was not built for comfort. Floating high above a neutral planet, the massive circular room was designed to make everyone feel small. Delegates from dozens of alien species sat in their assigned sections, each looking more worried than the last. Silk Jin stood at the edge of the human delegation. He was young, but he had something most diplomats didn't, a clear understanding of what was about to happen. Hannah Park sat with the Kraltheri delegation. She caught Silk Jin's eye and gave a tiny nod. Something big was coming. The chamber fell silent as the primary speaker began. An ancient Trelax diplomat, his tentacles moving slowly, spoke about the growing threat of the Vorta Imperium. His voice was tired, defeated. "We cannot stop them," he said. "We can only hope to survive." Those words hung in the air. Survive. Not fight. Not win. Just survive. Silk Jin stepped forward. The room turned to look at him. A human. Young. Unexpected. "We have a proposal," he said simply. Whispers filled the chamber. Humans rarely spoke in these meetings. They were new, unknown. Most species saw them as another potential victim, not a potential solution. Hannah activated a holographic display. Images began to show something different. Not battle plans, not weapon designs, something else entirely. The display showed human adaptability. It showed moments of human history, times when impossible challenges were overcome. Not through brute force, but through creativity, through understanding, through unexpected solutions. A recording played. A human military strategist speaking about the Vorta Imperium. His words were calm, analytical, but something else burned underneath. "The Vorta expect enemies to be afraid," the strategist said. "We are not afraid. We are curious." The alien delegates looked confused. Curiosity was not a military strategy. It was not a defensive position. It was something else entirely. Silk Jin continued. "We propose a different approach to the Vorta threat. Not just resistance, not just survival, something more." The Kraltheri delegation looked interested. They remembered the human communication signal, unexpected, complex, alive. The Zentari representatives leaned forward. They had heard stories about human innovation, but not everyone was convinced. An older Kraltheri diplomat stood up. "Humans are new," he said, "untested. Why should we listen?" Hannah spoke then. Her voice was clear and strong. "Because every other strategy has failed," she said, "and the Vorta keep winning." Silence filled the room. The holographic display changed. It showed potential strategies, not traditional military plans, something more dynamic, more alive. Plans that could change, plans that could adapt. Silk Jin looked around the room. He saw fear. He saw hope. He saw possibility. "We're not asking to lead," he said. We're asking to help, to show a different way of thinking. Outside the chamber, stars continued their silent dance. Millions of light years away, the Vorta Imperium continued its march of destruction. But something was changing. Something unexpected was about to begin. The cold darkness of space stretched out like an endless black canvas. Captain Min Seo Kwan stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, her eyes fixed on the holographic displays that showed the approaching Vorta fleet. This was not a typical military mission. This was a test, humanity's first real chance to show what they could do. The horizon was different from other human ships, smaller, faster, more flexible. It looked almost fragile compared to the massive alien warships that typically dominated space battles. But looks could be deceiving. Incoming Vorta squadrons, called out the ship's tactical officer. His voice was calm. Too calm for a moment like this. Min Seo nodded. "Let them come," she said quietly. The Vorta fleet approached like a massive wave of metal and destruction. They had crushed countless civilizations. They expected this to be another easy victory, another world to add to their growing empire. They had no idea what was coming. The first wave of Vorta ships fired. Massive energy weapons that could slice through most defensive shields. Most species would have panicked, would have tried to match the Vorta's firepower. The horizon did something else entirely. Instead of fighting directly, the ship began to move. Not in a straight line, not in any predictable pattern. It danced through space like something alive, weaving between energy blasts, using the battlefield itself as a weapon. Tactical shift. Min Seo called out. Implement puzzle protocol. Her crew moved with a precision that seemed almost impossible. They weren't just fighting. They were solving a complex, moving problem. The Vorta ships were powerful, but they were built for a certain kind of war, a war with rules, with expectations. Humanity didn't play by those rules. One Vorta ship tried to lock onto the horizon. Before it could fire, the human ship had already moved. Not just moved, it had turned the Vorta ship's own targeting systems against it. Target confirmed, the tactical officer said. But he wasn't talking about targeting an enemy ship. He was talking about understanding the enemy's entire system. Smaller human support ships began to appear. They weren't traditional fighters. They looked more like research vessels. They scanned. They analyzed. They learned. In the middle of a battle, they were collecting data, understanding the enemy in real time. The Vorta commanders watched in confusion. This wasn't how wars were fought. Ships were supposed to shoot, to destroy, not to think, not to adapt. Min Seo watched the battle unfold like a complex dance. Every movement had a purpose. Every action was part of a larger plan. Psychological disruption protocol, she said softly. The bridge crew understood immediately. The human ships began to broadcast signals, not weapons, not threats, information, complex, confusing information that broke the Vorta's communication networks. One by one, Vorta ships began to lose coordination. Their perfect formation started to break. They had never faced an enemy like this before, an enemy that fought with more than weapons. An enemy that fought with ideas. An enemy that saw war as a problem to be solved, not just a battle to be won. As the last Vorta ships retreated, something became clear. This was not just a battle. This was a message. Humanity had arrived. 3 weeks after the battle, Seok Jin found himself in a room that felt like it was holding its breath. The Interstellar Diplomatic Center was nothing like the calm space station from before. Now it buzzed with nervous energy. Alien delegates from a dozen different species sat around a massive circular table. Some looked angry. Some looked scared. Most looked confused. The holographic display showed the recent battle. Not just the military engagement, but every detail. How the human ships moved. How they thought. How they solved problems that weren't even considered problems before. Hannah Park stood near the human delegation. She was watching carefully. She knew something big was happening. "This is impossible," mumbled a Kralthuri diplomat. His tentacles moved nervously. Humans cannot have done this. But they had. The Vorta Imperium had lost more ships in this single battle than in the last 10 years of their expansion. Not through massive firepower, not through overwhelming force, but through something much more dangerous. Intelligence, creativity, understanding. Silk Jin stepped forward. The room went silent. "We are not looking to replace anyone," he said. His voice was calm, clear. "We are offering a different way of thinking." The Zintari representative leaned forward. Her multiple eyes blinked in a pattern that showed deep interest. "Explain," she said. Silk Jin activated another holographic display. It showed human history, not just military history, but moments of problem-solving, moments of unexpected solutions. A recording played. Dr. Yoon Jae from the Strategic Research Center. "War is not just about fighting," he said. "It's about understanding, about solving complex problems." The alien delegates watched. Some were confused. Some were impressed. Some were terrified. Humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something else entirely. An older Trillax diplomat spoke. His voice was heavy with years of conflict. "You make it sound simple," he said, "but wars are complex." "Exactly," Silk Jin responded. "And that's our strength." Outside the diplomatic center, news was spreading. The story of the human victory was becoming something more than a military report. It was becoming a legend. Some alien species began to request human advisors. Not soldiers, not weapons, but thinkers, problem solvers. The Kralthuri were the first. They remembered the first human communication signal. Unexpected, complex, alive. Hannah watched the negotiations. She understood something important. This was not just about one battle. This was about changing how entire civilizations thought about conflict. "We're not here to fight your wars," Silk Jin told the gathered delegates. "We're here to help you solve the problems that create wars." Whispers filled the room, some full of hope, some full of fear. The Vorta Imperium had made a mistake. They thought humanity was just another civilization to be crushed. They were wrong. Very wrong. As the diplomatic meeting continued, something was becoming clear. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was going to be at the center of that change. Not through force, not through destruction, but through something much more powerful. Understanding. Dr. Yoon Jae stood in front of a massive holographic display. Red markers showed the Vorta Imperium's latest attack zones. Blue markers represented the remaining free worlds. The blue was shrinking fast. "This is not just a war," he told his team. "This is a puzzle waiting to be solved." The Vorta Imperium had launched its biggest attack yet. Entire star systems were being swallowed. Millions of lives were at risk. Most species would have panicked. Humans were different. Captain Min Seo-Kwan arrived at the research center. Her ship, the Horizon, had survived the last major battle. But this was different. This was something bigger. "We need a complete strategy," she said. Her eyes scanned the holographic map. Where others saw destruction, she saw patterns. Hannah Park worked nearby, translating communication signals from different alien species. Each message told a story of fear, of hopelessness, but she was looking for something else. "They have a pattern," she said suddenly. Her fingers moved across multiple screens. "The Vorta always attack in a specific way." Dr. J moved closer. "Show me," he said. The holographic display changed. It wasn't just a war map anymore. It was a complex web of decisions, of choices, of possibilities. The Vorta Imperium believed in total control. They crushed worlds by removing all hope, by making resistance seem impossible. They broke civilizations before they could even think about fighting back. But they had never met humanity. Silk Jin entered the room. He brought something unexpected. Not more weapons, not more ships. Information. "We've been collecting data from every species the Vorta have attacked," he explained. The holographic display filled with complex networks of information, cultural data, communication patterns, economic structures. War is not just about fighting, Dr. J said. It's about understanding. The team began to work, not like a military unit, more like a group of problem solvers. Each person saw the challenge differently. Each person brought a unique view. Min Seo saw military movements. Hana saw communication patterns. Seok Jin saw political connections. Dr. J saw the bigger picture. They were building something more than a battle plan. They were building a solution. The Vorta attacked worlds that seemed weak, worlds that had no hope, worlds that were divided. Humanity would do something different. We're going to unite them, Seok Jin said, not as a military commander, but as a diplomat, as a problem solver. The plan was complex, but simple at its core. They would help different species communicate, understand each other, work together in ways they never had before. The Vorta expected enemies to be afraid, to be divided, to be predictable. Humanity would be none of those things. As the team worked, something was happening across the galaxy. Small communication networks began to form. Species that had never spoken to each other were now sharing information. The Vorta Imperium was about to learn something important. Humanity did not play by their rules. Humanity changed the game entirely. The sky burned with 1,000 different colors. Space itself seemed to tear apart as multiple species fleets gathered for what might be the last battle against the Vorta Imperium. Captain Min Seo Kwan stood on the bridge of the UES horizon. This was different from any battle before. This was not just about fighting. This was about saving entire civilizations. Incoming Vorta fleet, called the tactical officer. His voice was calm. Too calm for a moment like this. The Vorta ships looked like metal monsters. Huge, powerful, designed to crush hope itself. They had destroyed countless worlds. They believed no one could stop them. They were wrong. Behind the human ships, something extraordinary was happening. Alien species that had never worked together before were now united. The Kraltheri communication ships, the Zentari research vessels, species that once feared each other now fought side by side. Dr. Yoon Jae's voice came through the communication system. This is not a traditional battle, he said. This is a complex problem we're going to solve. The human strategy was nothing like traditional warfare, where other species would fight head-on. Humans did something different. Small human ships began to move, not to attack, but to understand. They scanned. They collected data. They found weaknesses no one else could see. Seok Jin coordinated from the communication center. He wasn't just sending military orders. He was helping different species communicate, share information, work together in ways they never had before. Hannah Park worked on breaking Vorta communication networks, not with weapons, but with information, with understanding. The Vorta fleet attacked. Massive energy weapons that could destroy entire planets. But the human-led alliance was ready. Instead of fighting the Vorta's strength, they worked around it. Human ships moved in patterns that made no sense to traditional military thinking. They used the battlefield itself as a weapon. They turned the Vorta's own systems against them. One by one, Vorta ships began to lose coordination. Their perfect formation started to break. Psychological disruption protocol, Min Seo called out. The human ships began to broadcast signals, not just weapons, not just threats, complex information that confused the Vorta's entire communication network. The battle was not about destroying ships, it was about breaking the system. Alien species watched in amazement. The humans were not just fighting. They were solving a complex problem in real time. The Vorta commanders tried to understand what was happening, but they couldn't. Humanity was playing a game with rules the Vorta didn't understand. We're not here to destroy you. Seok Jin's voice broadcast across all frequencies. We're here to show a different way. As the battle continued, something became clear. This was more than a military engagement. This was a statement about cooperation, about understanding, about solving problems instead of creating them. The Vorta fleet began to break apart, not through massive firepower, but through something much more powerful: intelligence, creativity, hope. As the last Vorta ships retreated, the galaxy held its breath. Humanity had changed everything. 1 month after the battle, Seok Jin stood in a room that looked nothing like a traditional war room. It was more like a large meeting space, filled with light, with hope. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat together. They were not enemies anymore. They were partners. The Vorta Imperium was not destroyed, but they were changed, transformed by an experience they had never expected. Dr. Yoon Jai presented a holographic display. It showed something remarkable. Not battle plans, not weapon designs, but connection maps, how different species could work together. "We are not here to conquer," Seok Jin told the gathered delegates. "We are here to solve problems." Hannah Park stood nearby. She remembered the first communication signal that had started everything. A random burst of human noise that had changed the galaxy forever. Captain Min Seo Kwan entered the room. Her uniform was different now. Not just a military outfit, something that showed she was more than a warrior. She was a problem solver. The holographic display changed. It showed worlds being rebuilt, not by force, but by cooperation. The Kraltheri representative spoke. His voice was different from before. No longer afraid, now full of possibility. "Humanity showed us something important," he said. "We can be more than we thought." Alien species that once feared each other were now sharing technology, sharing knowledge, sharing hope. The Vorta Imperium had been powerful, but they understood only one thing: control. Humanity showed them something else, something more powerful: understanding. Dr. J's research had revealed something important. Humanity's greatest strength was not its technology, not its military power, but its ability to see problems differently. "Every challenge is a puzzle," he would say, "and every puzzle can be solved." The new Galactic Council was not about who had the most weapons. It was about who could solve the most problems, who could help the most people. Seok Jin looked at the gathered representatives. Species that had been enemies were now working together, sharing information, building something new. "We are not special," he told them. "We are just willing to try something different." The room was quiet, but it was a good kind of quiet, a quiet full of possibility. Hannah thought about how everything had changed, from a random communication signal to a complete transformation of galactic relationships. Outside, ships from different species moved together, not as a military force, but as explorers, as problem solvers. The Vorta Imperium had believed in total control, in crushing hope. Humanity had shown them another way, a way of cooperation, a way of understanding, a way of solving problems together. The galaxy would never be the same again, and it all started with a simple communication signal, a burst of human noise that changed everything.